Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Comics Lair. We're sponsored by Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott. This panel will discuss the multifaceted life of Lois Lane. Now, I understand there's a new series out that has Lois in it. I personally have not seen it. There may be spoilers for that series in this panel. So if that matters to you, you might want to come back and watch the panel after you are current on the new series. And we'll start with a discussion of Lois in the comics first, and then we'll kind of warp other media into the discussion. And I'll start by asking our panel to introduce themselves and tell us a little about their interest in Lois Lane. John, will you start?
Okay, I'm John L. French, retired crime scene investigator, having done 35 plus years on the streets of Baltimore and lived to tell about it. And now I'm a writer of crime, pulp, horror, and whatever else the editor wants me to write. I first discovered Lois Lane by reading Superman and watching the George Reeves Superman TV show, and was not aware that she had a comic book until I found a copy of Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, in the barbershop.
Fraser?
I'm Fraser Sherman. I write historical fantasy and assorted nonfiction. My first experience with Lois Lane is probably a Silver Age story, The Rainbow Face of Superman, in which his face changes color because of red kryptonite reasons, and she is trying to use this to figure out his identity. I have been following her and the change, well, along with most DC comics, and the changes and developments in her life pretty much ever since.
Okay, Jenny?
All right. Hi, I'm Jenny Swartz-Levine. I'm the Dean of the School of Arts, Education, Humanities, and Social Sciences, an English professor, and co-director of the Tower Honors Program at Lake Erie College in Painesville, Ohio. And I came to Lois through Superman comics and cartoons, and have just been a fan of her journalism ever since.
Okay. Kelley?
Hi, my name is Kelley Frank. I am a horror artist and author, also going by Morbid Smile Art. And I started as a Batman fan. I'm still a Batman fan, but Lois has been like my favorite character in the Superman comics, just because like I always saw her as kind of a feminist icon, and she's just really bad and awesome, and I like her a lot.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, I'm Steve Sellars. I was an English professor for quite a few years in a small community college in Corpus Christi. Currently, the writer of various titles for Omen Comics, Revelation Comics. And as far as my relationship with Lois Lane, I think I came by her in a more traditional manner than probably most of you. I actually think I first saw her in Superman the movie, as portrayed by Margot Kidder, the classic portrayal. And I think from there, that really kind of got me gradually interested in her character. And over the years, discovering her in the comics, Danny Delaney in the animated series, and various modern incarnations. But I think what really draws me to her is that she seems to be like the one iconic superhero girlfriend who really has transcended that and kind of become almost like a secondary protagonist in the Heroes on title. And that's really on the strength of her character, because she is such an interesting, uncompromising character. She's somebody who, even without powers, is perfectly capable of being Clark Kent's equal and then some in all of their adventures and as a partner in life and in every other way, as the mother of, John Kent, all these other things that she is. And yet, she manages to have it all, and you got to love somebody who's able to do that through sheer, grit and determination. And at the same time, stand up to guys like Lex Luthor. She's great.
I think I discovered Lois when I was 7 or 8 years old. And I'm not sure exactly how I stumbled across her. It was probably through Superman. But the first Lois Lane story I remember reading was The Forbidden Box, which Superman plays a big role in. And that would have been like 1962 or 3. So I just liked it in part because back then there were not comic books with female headliners. Rita played a big role in the Silver Age Doom Patrol. There was Wonder Woman, who frequently had to be rescued by Steve Trevor. And that was really about it in terms of superheroes with titles led by women. And so I sort of started watching Lois anyway. And when I look at her as an adult, I have kind of a mixed reaction to those particular issues, but maybe we can talk about that as we go through. So as you all probably know, Lois made her debut along with Superman in Action Comics #1. And Golden Age Lois is kind of different from modern Lois. So when somebody says Golden Age Lois, what do you think of, Fraser?
I think of she's very much in the mold of a lot of fictional, excuse my phrasing, girl reporters of the time. Torchy Blaine, who was played by Glenda Farrell in a series of B movies. She is hard-boiled. She is determined to get the story. If she has to play a trick or two on Clark, so if she gets it before he does, hey, it's a newspaper game. It's legit. She is also, in a lot of stories, shown to be a very good reporter. And so that's my image of Golden Age Lois Lane. She is pretty cool. Also, after a couple of years, she gets quite cocky about the fact there's no point in kidnapping me. Superman is going to rescue me. You're going to be sorry you did this.
Okay. Jenny, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's pretty much my take on her too. I teach Action Comics #1 a lot, and my students really love the fact that she is empowered, that she is very much out there fighting for the story, that she thinks of herself not just as Clark's equal, but better because, you know, she's been at this longer, and she's not afraid of anything. She's fierce, and they really love that about her.
Okay. Kelley?
I'm going to pile on with all that. That was what I really liked about Lois when I first started, because I think the Golden Age comics are kind of classic. My dad is a big Superman fan, so you kind of start off with, he's like, no, you got to start with this. And I always thought she was really cool. I will also say that the first thing I think of with that is the Fleischer cartoons, because those are a really good introduction to Golden Age Lois Lane and Clark's dynamic, where I think there's one cartoon where they have press passes and she kind of steals his press pass so he can't get in to get the story. And it's just like, she doesn't care. She's underhanded sometimes, but she'll do anything for a good story, and she's brave, and it's really refreshing to see in a female character from that time period.
Yeah. John, did you want to add anything?
I don't really remember reading too many of the Golden Age comics in general, but specifically Lois Lane. So, you know, but Kelley I just finished watching a bunch of the Fleischer Superman comics, and yeah, she is that anything for a story. And if I have to get into danger, you know, I'll get into danger in order to get the story. I mean, and it's a hard-boiled reporter, whether she's a woman or a man. It fits the thing of hard-boiled reporter. And the fact that it was a woman back then says a lot about the way they were drawing the character of Lois Lane.
Yeah. I remember those Fleischer cartoons. Even though I said we'd talk about other media later, I'd naturally forgotten that the Fleischer cartoons pick up the Golden Age Superman. And she is like that. And by the early 60s, I don't think there were too many female characters who fit that description. That now, y'all disagree with me if you think I'm mistaken, but I just don't remember anybody in the early 1960s, female characters who were as driven as Golden Age Lois Lane.
Was Black Canary around then? Or which they kind of do away with her in like the 40s and 50s, and then picked her up when they needed a girlfriend for Green Arrow.
I don't know.
She appeared occasionally in the Silver Age whenever JLA and JSA teamed up. She and Starman had a couple of issues of Brave and the Bold to see if they would work as a Earth 2 series, but it did not catch on.
Yeah,
so she was around. She was in the first issue of comics I ever read, JLA 30, so she would have been known.
So she was in JLA from
Yes.
time to time anyway.
Sometimes, whenever they did the JSA team-ups.
Steve, do you want to add anything about Golden Age Lois?
No, I think you covered pretty much extensively. I do think that she does come from that girl reporter's, trope that was pretty common back in the 40s and a lot of 40s comics, particularly. But at the same time, I think it set her apart, I think, at the time. For its time, I think it was, the step forward that, characters like that needed. And it was certainly the formative background that allowed her to evolve into the character that she became later. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to add.
Can I add something?
Sure.
One thing, it was discovered many years later, Jerry Siegel, early 40s, wrote a story. If you hear some mewing, it's because my cat wants to know why we're not going up to bed yet, but too bad. He wrote a story in which Superman is exposed to kryptonite, or K-metal as he calls it. This was several years before kryptonite showed up for regular, and he and Lois are trapped in a cave-in by the K-metal. He has to reveal his identity to get Lois out alive, and at the end don't you realize how much help I could be to you? We can be a team now. And you're right, Superman and Lois, partners. And his editors decided they were a lot more sexist than Siegel, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
They did not like that and killed the story. So it's interesting to think how the Silver Age might have been different if they had established that so early.
Well, that's actually a good segue into the Silver Age.
Yes.
Into what did you think of Silver Age Lois and her comic book, which is really more of a Silver Age book than a Golden Age book. Jenny, will you start?
The Silver Age, just generally speaking, I mean, I prefer Golden Age Lois because she is sort of that. She's less enamored with the romance part of it. And I mean, we start to see all of that happening in the Silver Age, but that's true for all of the titles. So she's fine, but she's not sort of as intrepid and, sort of fierce about sort of the girl reporting thing. And it's just this constant Superman, quest for Superman, quest for loving Superman, having him love her back. So the Silver Age is not my favorite part.
Kelley?
Silver Age, I think, is like, it's definitely not my favorite part either. I feel bad because it's like, you can tell that the comics code was implemented, and you can tell how scared that people were of having women with any kind of agency. And you really start to see like the whole romance angle, like you were saying, like really start to pick up because they don't know what to do with her. And it's less about her being an intrepid reporter and being really good at her job and stuff. And it's more just like, gosh, I hope Superman likes me in this dress. Oh no, I have a cat head. I better hide in a box because Superman will hate me, things like that. And it's just, there's a lot of crying, and it just makes me sad for her. But I think it's important because it's the impetus for, a lot of change later. But I mean, it really is kind of a low point in my personal opinion. It's funny to read now, like, ironically, but it's also kind of a little sad if you like step back and, really look at the messaging that was being put across at the time.
Yeah. Steve?
There are many things that I like about the Silver Age, and particularly Super Age Superman. Lois is not one of them. I like the fun and the whimsy and the creativity and the, bonkers stuff that they would come up with, like, mini Supermen that come out of his finger. That is good Silver Age. Bad Silver Age is the way that they handle Lois Lane. And particularly, I think a lot of it is, she was just the love interest for the most part. And on top of that, it's like, okay, she's part of a love triangle with Clark and Superman, which, went back and forth for decades and never really advanced a whole lot until, in the 80s, they finally had, Clark reveal who he was. And on top of that, she was invariably a victim of the super dickery, quote unquote, phenomenon, where Mort Weisinger would just have Clark, do these diabolical tricks on everybody around him, including Lois. Lois was so often the butt of the joke. And I'm just like, she deserves better than that. Not least because, she's a reporter and she should be smart enough to see through these things. But no. I totally can't figure out who you are, Clark Kent. I have no idea you're Superman. And a lot of these a lot of it was the superhero identity, sort of shenanigans where, Superman would, invariably, try to fool her, and she would just never pick up on it for because of reasons. Lois is not that dumb. Lois is not, is just not, I think, that character. It was a phase of her life that she thankfully grew out of, and yeah.
Okay, John.
Hey, actually, when I did read Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, it was less for Lois Lane and more for Rose and the Thorn, but which was a great backup feature in that. But I remember, what the others said, but it was very heavy-handed with the issue of the day. The time Lois changed her skin color to make a point. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but it was just like they did it with a broadsword instead of an épée. And the time in which she married a condemned criminal for some reason. But he was executed, so she was now officially a widow, and never mentioned about it. And a lot of the times it was either trying to prove that Superman and Clark Kent were the same. It was her doing something stupid and trying to hide it from Superman. It just was not a good. I mean, even though they did give her a comic book with her name on it, which was later, I believe, folded into Jimmy Olsen. But, it just was not a good take on Lois Lane.
Okay. Fraser?
On the one hand, we have, as somebody once put it, the stories can be broken down into Superman teaches Lois a lesson. Lois tries to trick or persuade Superman into marrying her. Lois undergoes a freak transformation, and then a small minority where she is a good reporter. On the other hand, I mean, somebody said they had Lois not knowing that Clark was Superman. That is wrong. She knows. She is never able to prove it, and he keeps talking her out of it, but she always comes back to it. Luthor, smartest man in the world, doesn't believe it. Perry, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, doesn't believe it. Lois knows. It's like there is and I'll give you a specific example in a second, there is a much smarter person trying to break out of the script. Action 290, a story called Half is Superman. Superman loses his powers on half of his body. By an amazing coincidence, Lois, checking to see if she can cut Clark's hair, because that would prove he's not Superman, discovers she can cut his hair. Obviously, she's been wrong all these years. But then she starts to notice the way he's carrying himself, the way he's using his powers, the way he seems to shield one half of his body from a dangerous radiation, and she realizes what's happened. Perry doesn't believe her. Jimmy doesn't believe her. She is not able to prove it, but she figures it out. That is very good reporting. She is much better than the stories made her look.
Well, I actually like that phrase, a smarter character trying to break out of the script.
Yeah.
Because when I looked back at the old Lois Lanes, I like your breakdown. But to me, and I didn't buy Lois regularly because Legion of Superheroes came first. And then came Superman and Batman. And so, whatever I had money left over for, I bought. 25 cents a week went farther in those days than it goes now. So the ones that I had read seemed to break down between the Lois wants Superman to marry her and is trying to unmask his secret identity to that end, or Lois and Lana are in a race to discover Superman's secret identity, and whichever one wins, he has to marry, because I guess he has no say in it now that they've set up this contest, or romantic suspense stories, where Lois is, as you said, an investigative reporter. She's on the track of a story. There might be a little romance in there with Superman, but it's not the main line of the story. And looking back on those with a modern perspective, those were the stories that I thought really held up. And I don't know if that's what they thought they being the editors, thought girl readers wanted to read. All the girl readers I knew wanted adventure and fight scenes and action. We didn't care so much about whether Superman and Lois ever got married. I mean, we were like 7 and 8. Why would we care? So it was just that kind of a thing. And I think they did her a disservice. And like John, I really liked the Rose and Thorn issues, backup stories in the later issues. And they brought Rose Forrest forward when Brian Michael Bendis rebooted the Legion of Superheroes. And she was the point of view narrative character, but she's not Lois. And then Lois's book came to an end. But then she had, I think it was a 2-issue, they called it a miniseries, but 2 issues is more like a duology. Let's not really call it a series. And then in a few years back, she had a 12-issue miniseries. Did anybody read any of those? And if so, what did you think of them? And I think we're starting with Steve this time.
You might want to, could you re-ask the question?
The recent Lois Lane miniseries, 12 issues, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 now, and then back several years before that, the 2 issues that it pleases DC to call miniseries.
I can't really comment on those because I haven't read them, unfortunately. I mean, they were kind of like on my radar, but then I started cutting down on comics at that point. So I don't know.
Okay. Kelley?
I haven't read them either yet. They're on my to-read list, but I haven't gotten to them.
Okay. Fraser, were you?
I read the 2-issue one. It was by Devin Grayson. It's really good. It's Lois working as a journalist. I think the case is missing persons, and there's no Superman. It's sort of just Lois working as a reporter, which is more common in stories these days, but was a novelty back then. I think there might have been a mention of Superman once or twice, but she's on her own. She is living her own life with Superman somewhere in the background, and it shows her off as a reporter very well.
Okay. John, Jenny, did you read either one of those?
Jenny, go ahead.
I did, and I enjoyed the Devin Grayson one very much, and I also enjoyed that 12-issue one. It was terrific. It focused on Lois as a reporter again, and she was going all over the world following the story that went all the way through the story arc. It was tremendous. Loved it. Yeah,
it was a very good series. I remember I was aware that there was a 2-issue series. But I did read the 12-issue, and in addition to being one great story, it also tied in with what was going on with Superman at the time, because one of the underlying scandals of the day was that she was married to Clark Kent, but somebody got a picture of her kissing Superman. Now, we all know there's nothing wrong with that, but everybody else is Lois cheating on her husband. And so she's dealing with that problem. And I think somewhere at the beginning, it's kind of like her telling Clark, look, you've got problems. I know how to get a hold of you if I need you, but I don't think I'm going to need you. And so that's, that covered that. And I liked it because if I remember correctly, it brought in the question.
Yes.
It did.
Actually, I think it brought in both questions.
Yes.
Which I've always liked the question as a character. I didn't cry, but I was very sad when the first one died. Yeah. But he got better.
Well, I liked the fact that I don't have a really clear memory of either one of those minis. I remember reading them at the time, but I remember liking the fact that Lois was pretty much on her own. She had these allies she found along the way, but she was in charge. She was handling things. And it was, on top of that, it was a good story. The story hung together really well. So, I mean, I would say it's probably collected in a trade somewhere. If you missed it, go see if you can find the trade, because
I'm sure it is. They collect everything in trades these days. There was also another one between those two, and it was a Skip Week series. the fifth Wednesday of the month. And it would the overall title of the Skip Week thing was the unfortunately named Girl Power.
Right.
And one of the issues, I know Secret from Young Justice was one of them. In fact, I think that's when they introduced Secret. But Girl Power, Lois Lane. So basically that was her comic, and the whole idea was that the male characters took a backseat to the female characters. The only two I can remember was Lois Lane and Secret.
Right. And somebody said something about the 12-issue, more recent one being on the DC app. Did I hear that correctly?
There's a lot. I'm on the app, and there's a lot of stuff on it. I have not looked for that one. And simply because DC has so much stuff, what they pick is erratic, but it's worth checking if you've got it. I think you can look and see what's on the app without actually signing up for it.
Okay. Well, since we're just discussing Superman's absence and the whole romance, marrying Superman is my goal in life thing, let's talk about the relationship of Lois Lane and Superman. And how would you sum it up looking over the what is it, 80 years since 85 years since Lois and Superman made their debut? Jenny, I think we're at the point of starting with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, and actually, the reason I know it's 85 is we just Ursuline College, which is just up the road from us. We did the 85th celebration of Superman in Cleveland. So that was a lot of fun. And one of the things that got focused on was Lois, and I enjoyed seeing that an awful lot too. But their relationship has kind of waxed and waned over the years, but it's always been to me kind of complicated. Because even in the Silver Age, while she did not get treated as sort of the brilliant woman reporter that she is, to me, Clark has always had great respect for her as a reporter, as a colleague. He knows she's smart. As I said, even in those terrible Silver Age years when it was kind of bad to be Lois. And to me, that's what makes their relationship work, is that there's this mutual respect, there's this mutual admiration, there's this sense of adventure that they're going to go compete against each other, but also when they're on a story together. That, to me, has always been very, very interesting. And they make each other better. And that's what I really love about the Superman and Lois relationship.
Okay. Kelley?
I agree. I think that Superman and Lois, I think the problem with the Silver Age is that it felt like it got more into him like gaslighting her in a lot of ways. And we didn't really have a term for that, but I feel like that's something that you can kind of see now, where he's just like, you're just silly, Lois, all these little things. And now I feel like the reason that didn't work is because he had always respected her as a reporter. I was doing some research, and Lois Amster is the one of the people that Jerry Siegel based Lois on, and it was a person in high school that he had a crush on, but he never had the.
And he wrote a poem for her.
Yeah, and he never confessed that to her, and it was just so cute. And I feel like that, having that as the core of her character, that like this is a person he likes and respects, but even though he's Superman, it's not that he's like scared, like, oh no, she's going to give away my identity. It's not that he thinks that. It's that he's often just like, if I confess this, then it's scary because she's so cool. You know what I mean? So I think that's, even Superman can get intimidated in a way like that. And I think that, that way there's a power dynamic there where they're actually more on equal footing than it seems. And I think that's what makes their relationship work, because they really do have complementary skills, and it makes them, they do make each other better people. And I think like it's grown a lot more as the comics have gone on. And I think honestly, like their relationship is one of the best ones in comics. Like their relationship, I can't really think of anybody who has like one of the big, DC superheroes. I can't think of anyone who has like better like chemistry and relationship than those two, where it's like they seem like they would function well together.
Okay. John?
Well, and speaking of that, there were the Silver Age Hawkman and the unfortunately named Hawk Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the three Flashes, really. Jay Garrick and Joan, Barry and Iris, and Wally and
Linda.
Wally. Yeah, they seem to have a nice, solid relationship. But yeah, Lois and Clark are they are the best couple, and right now they are functioning as a very successful very successful marriage where both of them have very important jobs. Clark is his main job is Superman, but during the Silver Age, it was like, and even into the modern era, DC seemed to be very afraid of relationships because, I think it started because their target audience was like 10 to 12-year-old boys and girls, type of thing. And so during the Silver Age, you had that dichotomy of the big, brave Superman and Clark Kent doing the Don Diego bit where he's pretending to be kind of cowardly and all that, so no one would suspect he's Superman. And at the same time, so, in a way, Lois really didn't respect Clark because he was sort of a wimp. Mm-hmm. And but Clark at the same time was thinking, if I tell her I'm Superman, she'll like me, but will she like me because I'm Superman? Or will she like me as Clark Kent? It's the old rich person thing. If I tell her I love her, will she say she loves me because she really does, or because I can buy and sell the city she lives in? So the relationship, there really was, the relationship in Silver Age was more of professional colleagues, one of whom was trying to figure out if Superman was trying to prove that Superman and Clark Kent were one of the same. And maybe she was doing that because if I can prove to him that I already know, then maybe we can get together. But I think the whole thing, there was no real romantic relationship because DC was afraid of, I think the only two married couples in the Silver Age were the Carters and a elongated man and his wife.
Okay. Fraser?
I completely disagree with John about that last point. DC had a lot of relationships. Flash married in the Silver Age, Aquaman married. Alana and Adam Strange on the Planet Ram were definitely not sleeping in twin beds. They were probably the most kissingest couple of the Silver Age. But getting back to Lois and Superman, or Lois and Clark, they just fit together. They tried breaking them up for a while in the New 52. They tried pairing up Superman with Wonder Woman. And it's pointless because it's going to be Superman and Lois at the end of the day, one way or another. As far as the mutual respect goes, there was a story in Superman Family 200, which was the magazine that merged Supergirl, Jimmy Olsen, and Lois Lane into an anthology book. And it's set like 16 years in the future. Lois and Clark are married. They have a kid. Lois discovers she's pregnant again, just as she's thinking, my daughter is old enough, I can get back to work. And she tells Clark, okay, you are Superman. You are amazing, but you can be Superman and Clark Kent reporter and a full-time dad. You can only be 2 out of those 3. And I am not willing to be a full-time mom anymore. It's unstated, but the implication is abortion was an option. So what are you going to pick? And he looks at her for a second. Well, you were always a better reporter than me. And so he's going to be the house husband / Superman. And I thought that was a great bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, there's these two characters work so well as a couple, and so much of it really comes down to their personality dynamics. You have Clark, who is this very optimistic character, this guy from, a very different world than Lois lives in, both literally and figuratively, because not only does he come from another planet, he comes from Smallville, and he has these very small town values. Whereas, you see Lois, and she's been in Metropolis, for a good part of her life. She's seen the seedy part of the world. She's seen how things operate. You would think that outwardly that these two wouldn't necessarily click, except that they want the exact same things. They both believe in truth and justice, and I love that. Like, all of that works. Their goals ultimately are the same, and that's why they align, despite all those differences. And then the differences that they have then become complementary, because it's Clark who gives her hope and helps her to see, people in a better light than she does, whereas she, pokes the bubble of his idealism a little bit and helps him see things in a more realistic way. I just love that dynamic. I think that absolutely works. I think that the mutual respect angle, and especially when we see versions that have very slow burn type romances, where they're kind of going off on because Lois is sort of seeing that Clark is mysterious, and he just somehow manages to nab a story, even though he seems like he wouldn't be able to get it. All these kinds of interesting things that happen, and and meanwhile he's seeing her, and he's seeing how capable that she is, at getting the story, and she doesn't have like even a fraction of the abilities that he gets. And part of the reason why he's so good at finding the stories that he's able to find is because he's Superman, and he can see things from halfway across Metropolis. He can hear what people are saying. He has advantage of all these super senses, and her power is that she is a damn good reporter. And I just think that those two it's just wonderful, and kind of seeing the character development over time, seeing them grow together over time. I just think it's a natural character journey, and this is why, when you try to split them up, it doesn't work, because it's like they just are drawn to each other. It's just, that's just the way the myth goes. That's the way these characters are, is that, eventually that's the end game. That's where it always ends. And I just really kind of am glad that DC has, at least in the meantime, kind of acknowledged that.
Well, I agree with everything you all have said about the relationship and why it works. Before we started recording, those of us who were here early were talking, and my first issue of Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, that I remember is one called The Forbidden Box. And Superman was noticing Lois being snoopy around the office. And so, of course, he feels free to chide her for this in front of everybody, and gives her a little box is delivered for her to hold for him, not to be opened until the next day. And the box is talking to her and trying to convince her to open it. And it can help her if she'll open it. Well, Lois passes the test. I don't think it's a spoiler alert for a comic from 1962. And it turns out that inside the box is one of the people from the bottle city of Kandor. And he's been helping Superman try to prove to Lois that her curiosity is out of hand. And so I was looking up, because I didn't really remember the details about the story. And I found them on a website called it's Confessions of a Superman Fan, and the URL is David Morefield, like give me some more in the field.com. And he says this about the relationship. Honestly, I don't know why so many people talk up the Superman-Lois relationship as some kind of great romance, when most of the time he treats her at best as a pain in the neck and worst as some kind of crazed stalker. And I think that's not unfair about the Silver Age relationship between Superman and Lois. And I think, to me, it appears that relationship has evolved as gender roles in general have evolved, because we're talking 1962, this issue was published. And that's what I like about it too. And I especially liked the exchanges between them when they were discussing, in keeping with the picture of Lois Lane kissing Superman, should he reveal his identity to the world, and what were the implications of that? And I also liked the way, as a mom, she and John had this whole system. Like if there's a threat, we're out in the woods, we call dad, we have a way to deal with it. It was not like we need him instantly because we're toast without him. It's like, we got this and we'll call him if we need him, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We've got about 15 minutes and we have not talked about other media. Is there anybody, let's try that again. Is there anything anybody would like to say about Lois in the comics before we move on to other media?
The one thing that listening to everybody that reminded me of this, when Clark first revealed, I think they were already engaged, and he revealed to Lois that he was Superman. And her reaction at first was, yeah, I've been right all along. But then she got mad at him because she accused him of cheating. That he got all these Superman stories, all these other stories as Clark Kent, when he was basically the principal of the story. And she was really mad at him because he cheated as a reporter. But that was my one take.
Yeah.
I kind of want to add to that a little bit, and that is, we can't talk about the comics without bringing up All-Star Superman at least once. Right. And for me, I just love the beginning of that where, by the way, Lois, I am Superman. And her reaction is, I don't believe you. Because it would mean that you've been lying to me all these years, and I just do not believe Superman would do that. I'm just like, that's great. I mean, and I will say that is one of my favorite Superman stories of all time, and I think that it captures so perfectly like the overall arc of what these characters have been, both Lois and Clark.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything else before we move on? Okay, then what is your favorite Lois Lane version in other media and why? Kelley, will you start?
I have to go with Margot Kidder. I love her. Like, her version of Lois is the one that always comes to my mind. It's the one that sticks in my head every time I'm reading her and I hear her voice. That one is just because she's so feisty and she's so interesting and she's just so like her portrayal of that of the character, I think really cemented what we think of now when we think of Lois Lane. She's not just snooping around. She's a good reporter. She knows what she's doing, but she's also got a nice, like, almost vulnerable side to her. And I don't know. There's just the way she's portrayed is just really nice. Margot Kidder is my go-to.
Okay, John, what about you?
Hey, we mentioned the Fleischer Lois Lane, who was the intrepid reporter, whether she was a girl reporter, a woman reporter, a male reporter. She was out and out, first and foremost, a reporter who would rush into danger just to get the story. But my favorite was the Lois Lane of the animated series. She was just everything to me that Lois Lane should be. Yeah, she suspected that Clark and Superman were the one and the same, but it didn't override her life. She went out and got the story. And when I think of Lois, I think it really did her justice as in the Superman the animated series.
Okay, Fraser?
I'm not sure I would pick a favorite. Possibly Margot Kidder. She did do a wonderful job and it was influential. But I also like Terry Hatcher. I love Dana Delaney's voicing of the animated series. The new Max series, My Adventures with Superman, is a lot of fun. It gets, spoilers, so cover your ears, anyone who doesn't want to know, but it gets the relationship and Lois knowing his identity established very quickly because, of course, it's not such a shocking change from the status quo in the comics anymore. And they're all interns at the Daily Planet, but she is enthused and pumped up and smart and very winning, and you can see why Clark falls for her almost instantly.
Okay, Jenny?
I also love Margot Kidder. It was when I was a kid, and there's movie video rental stores became a thing, and you could actually rent the VCR and the movie. The first movie we rented was Superman the movie, and I just absolutely adored it. I love all of the other versions too, but You've Got Me, Who's Got You? I mean, to me, that's my Lois.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm kind of as well. It's kind of hard to pick a favorite, to be honest. I have to go with Margot Kidder in terms of live action, just because she was kind of my first, and it was so formative on me. So it's kind of hard not to think of her. But at the same time, I really do love Dana Delaney in the animated series. I think that version is one of the more comic accurate versions of her that we've seen. I also really, all the other ones that have been mentioned, I would agree with as well. And I would also, as a small note, mention Elizabeth Tulloch on Superman and Lois. I think that she really got the character, and especially the more modern Lois, who's the mother as well as being a reporter and all the other things. The one that has all that, the whole work-life balance kind of figured out. And it's kind of nice to see all these different versions. But I have to say the most iconic probably is Margot Kidder. I mean, there are just too many really great moments. And even small moments like when Superman says, "Yes, I'm going to fight for truth, justice in the American way." And her response is this very cynical, snarky thing. Well, you're going to make a politician, your enemies of the politicians of half the city. I'm like, that is such a quintessential Lois moment, and Kidder's delivery is so good in those kinds of moments.
Yeah, and one of the things I liked about her portrayal was that it wasn't that Lois was dismissive of Clark. It's just that she's focused on the goal, and she just doesn't have time for anything other than casual chit-chat. And so she's just totally oblivious. And I really agree with everything that you all have said, but I'd like to also give a nod to Erica Durance, because I think she and Tom Welling had a really good dynamic, and she had the intrepid reporter thing down. So I'm just adding her to the mix because nobody else mentioned her, and I like her a lot. But I think Margot Kidder set the standard. I mean, when Kelley and I were talking earlier, I was thinking, well, Dana Delaney. I really liked Dana Delaney in the animated series. But sitting here listening to you all, I'm the ping pong ball. I'm going back and forth. Well, that's good. Well, no, that's a point. And so I think we've got a lot of good choices. And Fraser, did you want to say something?
Yeah, there is. I did a book on aliens on Earth. The aliens are here. So I watched the Superman movies as part of that. And I watched the Donner cut. Richard Donner was taken off the second movie because he had issue with the Sorkin producers' notoriously creative accounting. And so he didn't. So the Donner cut reassembles, to the extent possible, the movie the way he would have done it, which includes the way Lois learns Clark is Superman. After she suspects it, when they're alone in the honeymoon suite, she draws out a gun and she shoots him. And he stands there and he's not hurt. And all right, yes, I'm Superman. But what if I'd been Clark? And she shows it's a gun full of blanks. She tricked him. And I love that moment.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well,
I prefer the Donner cut. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
I think that's a testament to how good her character is, though, that there's so many different takes, and like we can all have like all these different, like, oh, I like this one, I like this one, but it's like we all get at the essential. It's really, she's a good character. But like somebody said earlier, the delivery makes a really big difference in how the character comes apart. I just can't talk tonight, y'all. Sorry. How the character comes across, the delivery makes a really big difference. And I think all of the people we've been talking about were effective in the way they presented Lois, so that she was capable as well as sympathetic and relatable. And we've got a few more minutes, so there's one other thing. Since we've been talking about the honeymoon suite scene, what did you think about the amnesia ending of Superman 2? Fraser, you want to start?
I hated it. Okay, for those who don't know, the original plan for the ending, or Richard Donner's original plan, was that Superman would go back and rewind time so the Phantom Zone villains never arrive on Earth. Lois never learns his identity, and she doesn't have to live with hiding it and not showing what she feels for Clark. They couldn't think of a good ending for the first movie, so they moved that one forward. Then they couldn't think of a good ending for the second movie, so we got the amnesia kiss. It is, quite aside from the treatment of Lois, it is way too hand-wavy. It does not make sense. I was never happy with it.
Okay. Jenny?
I am not a fan of the amnesia ending either, because for the similar reasons that Fraser indicates, but also then when we get to the Brandon Ruth movie, then all of a sudden there's this baby that there's no explanation from how we get from that one to, in essence, that Lois now has a kid. I mean, it's terrible with sprinkles on it all the way around. So.
Steve?
I don't like it at all. It is way too Deus Ex Machina. Is basically, and I know that a lot of Superman stories have in the past, kind of had him, pull, certain powers, out of thin air to resolve a situation. But no, and on top of that, you have the ethical question of, gee, is it ethical for somebody like Superman to erase, not only someone else's mind, but somebody else's mind of someone that he loves? I mean, do you do that to somebody that you love? That bothers me. That bothers me a lot. And it just seemed like, they had to have the ending of, we have to put the genie back in the bottle after we've introduced it. Well, yeah, but any attempt to try to roll it back is not going to be satisfying. And this particular method is particularly unsatisfying for a number of reasons that, we've all gone into. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't like it.
Okay, Kelley?
Same. I also don't like it. I feel like it takes away agency from the characters. I also really hate it whenever we have like that kind of sitcom ending where everything has to reset to the way it was so that you can keep going along. I prefer watching characters grow and change, and it rubs me the same way as like when, oh well, this character is problematic, so let's just kill them and then move on. And it's like, no, it's much more interesting to confront that and see how that changes and how the characters respond to it. And it just feels like lazy writing. And I remember watching that as a kid and being so mad, just so angry on Lois's behalf. And honestly, that was the thing that made me like gravitate toward Batman instead of Superman more for a long time, because it felt like such a disservice to a character that I really liked and connected with. And it's frustrating. Like that scene just makes me so angry.
John?
Okay. Basically what Superman did was assault Lois.
Yes.
And that's not something Superman would do.
Mm-hmm.
He would deal with the problem, and they had the perfect ending, which came up in the animated Superman crossover, which I think everybody calls World's Finest,
Mm-hmm.
where Lois and Bruce Wayne are having a relationship, and she's working with Batman, not knowing that he's Bruce Wayne, and Batman gets caught in this piece of machinery which rips his tail off. And later, Lois just says, I have the story of the year, and I can't tell anybody. And that's where they left it, and that would have been the perfect ending for Superman 2, with Lois realizing she basically has the story of the century, but she can't tell anybody. And
Yes.
just leave it at that. Just leave it hanging. It gives you something to deal with in Superman 3.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think she was in Superman 3.
No,
Well,
About
they-
30 minutes.
Yeah.
No,
It was
yeah.
a Lana story. And I thought Annette O'Toole was good as Lana, but I kind of wanted to see a follow-up to, oh, well. And also, I didn't know that Superman had the power of inducing amnesia through his kiss, aside from...
Well, that's how good a kisser he is.
I guess so. Well, we're actually at time. So let's just wrap it up this time, and we'll go around, tell people where they can find information about your work. If there's anything recent or upcoming you want to highlight, this would be the time. And we'll start with you, John.
Okay, you can find me on Facebook And you can find my books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and through my various publishers. My newest book is In the Ruins of Caroline, which is a collection of, believe it or not, fantasy stories featuring the knight Connor of Scotch.
Yeah.
Fraser?
Hi, you can find me at frasersherman.com, Fraser. My book, 19 Infinity, Historical Fantasy Short Stories, came out earlier this year. I had a short story, Sherlock Holmes in Dimension 919, which is Durham's local spec fic magazine. And I blog about comics at Atomic Junk Shop, including occasionally Lois and Superman.
Okay. Jenny?
I am on whatever we're calling Twitter these days. My handle is at Jennifer Swartz 2. I'm also on Facebook as Jennifer Swartz-Levine, and can be found on email at the Lake Erie College website at lec.edu.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as well. You can find me at Shadewing, and a lot of my comics are also promoted on Revelation Comic, at Revelation Comic on Twitter. And in addition to that, I also, the books that I do, I also do other podcasts, Cinema Crusaders, where we talk about various movies from way back. And, you know, we just kind of tend to do like a Kevin Bacon thing a week where these days where we just kind of go over like a different movie based on who was in it.
Okay. Kelley?
You can find me at morbidsmile.com. It is Morbid Smile art and writing with a spooky edge. You can also look me up at Kelley M. Frank, Kelley. I'm about to do some nice big drops for upcoming, holiday things. So you can check out all my stuff. I'm going to have a bunch of new things popping up on the website soon.
You can find me, of course, here on ConTinual, and my website is nancynorthcott.com. I'm still on whatever Twitter is called this week, and I'm at Nancy Northcott, but I've also migrated to Blue Sky, where I am at Nancy North, and I am very, very rarely, as in almost never, on Facebook. So thank you to everyone on the panel for joining this discussion. Thank you to everyone who's watching, and thanks to our sponsors, Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and Heroes Convention. For more information about them, visit heroesonline.com.